Number 8 in our series on sprinting biomechanics is a 2012 paper by Dorn et al. Titled Muscular Strategy Shift in Human Running, Dependence of Running Speed on Hip and Ankle Muscle Performance. Here, they took biomechanics measurements of, I think, 9 individuals who ran on a treadmill at speeds from 3.5 meters per second up to 9.5 meters per second or so. With 3.5 being a moderate, like, jogging endurance type speed, so not a terribly demanding distance running type speed, compared to 9+ meters per second being a very fast sprinting speed. Beyond that, if somebody can run at 9 meters per second, they're pretty fast. That's a decent speed for a maximum sprint for a normal person. So covering the whole range of speeds here that people might normally run at, a slow jog up to a maximum sprint. They then took those biomechanics data and input them to a musculoskeletal model, a computer model of the body, that they used to estimate muscle forces throughout the body at those different running speeds, and more importantly for their outcome here, the contributions of those muscle forces to what they call different gait subtasks, like the task of supporting the body weight against gravity during the stance phase, and the task of swinging the leg forward and positioning the leg for contact in the swing phase. The motivation for the study was calling back to something we first brought up in the Weyand et al. Study, where we had this characteristic pattern of how stride length and stride frequency increase when people increase their running speed. So here again, from the left to the right on this x-axis is increasing speed from like 3 to 10 meters per second. So up from a slow jog up to a max sprint. And notice we first did that if I increased from a jogging speed up to like a very fast distance running speed or a slow sprint. I did that primarily by increasing stride length. So black dots going up, white dots not doing much. But then my stride length starts to not increase by so much, and I start to increase stride frequency more. And then eventually, as I'm going from like a slow sprinting speed up to my max sprinting speed, stride length levels off, and I start increasing my speed further by increasing my stride frequency, cycling the legs faster and faster. So it seems like I shift my strategy here at a certain point. From going from slow to moderate speeds, I do it primarily by increasing stride length, taking longer and longer strides with each stride. But then eventually I shift and I say I'm no longer increasing stride length, or I can no longer increase stride length. Now I'm going to get my speed primarily from increasing stride frequency. So why do I shift? What's the source of that shift? And what can that shift tell me about how people achieve speeds and how we might train for faster speed? And that's really at the core of the Dorn et al. Paper here. Again, not that you should just read the abstract, but the abstract does a great job of summarizing the results here, so I'll focus on that here in my summary. They found that for speeds up to about 7 meters per second, so from like a slow jog up to like a moderate sprint for these folks, that increase in speed was achieved primarily by the runners changing what the plantar flexors were doing. The soleus and gastrocnemius muscles, the muscles in the back of the calf that connect to the Achilles tendon and give you that plantar flexion motion of pressing the toes into the ground. Okay. Now, what were those muscles doing? As you increased your speed up to about 7 meters per second, the nervous system here demanded more force and more power from those muscles, primarily to contribute more quickly and more substantially to vertical support forces. So relying on these two muscles, the plantar flexors, soleus and gastrocnemius, primarily to quickly press the foot into the ground and quickly generate large vertical forces to offset gravity and generate an average force big enough to support my body weight against gravity. Okay. So those muscles were able to do that, or able to continuously increase their contribution to that task up to about 7 meters per second. But then they say at speeds faster than 7 meters per second, the plantar flexors were shortening at very high velocities, which, because of our force-velocity relationship, meant they no longer had time to generate the greater forces that were needed to offset gravity. So as I increased my speed above 7 meters per second, my plantar flexor muscles, these guys are topped out. They're producing as much force as they can at these really fast shortening velocities, and they can no longer make a greater contribution to offsetting gravity and producing forces faster that I need to speed up and to generate the vertical forces I need. So above 7 meters per second, then my strategy has to shift. Okay? I can no longer ask more of my plantar flexors. They were the thing that were letting me increase my stride length by generating sufficient vertical support forces, and I can no longer do that. So I got to maintain my stride length and shift my strategy here to further increasing my speed above 7 meters per second by increasing my stride frequency. Okay, so cycling the legs faster and faster. How did I do that? Well, I relied not on my plantar flexors, but on my hip muscles. I used the iliopsoas, that hip flexor muscle from last time, to more vigorously swing the leg forward in the swing phase. And that's a challenge then. It's swinging forward more vigorously, it's moving faster, it's got more kinetic energy. That's okay because I can fire up my glute max to slow down that swing, and I can fire up my hamstrings, like we said, to arrest the motion and to act eccentrically to take energy out of the leg and slow it down and prepare for the next stance phase. Okay. So again, another study providing support for our two theories on what limits maximum sprinting speed. The need to generate vertical support forces against gravity in progressively less and less time as we speed up, and this primarily affecting our stride length and not our rate at which we're cycling the legs. But eventually we start moving so fast that we can no longer use, or we can no longer demand more of the primary muscles responsible for that. And so I got to shift my strategy, and now I got to rely on a swing phase strategy. Cycle the legs faster and faster, swing the leg forward faster and faster, and arrest that swing more effectively in terms of taking more kinetic energy out of the faster swinging leg using these kind of brake muscles here, using the glute max to slow the swing down and the hamstrings to slow the whole leg down. Okay, so some support for both of our theories here again on what limits speed. Some more specifics on how they limit speed in terms of which muscles are responsible there and why. In terms of a practical message for training and for limits to maximum speed, we could use this to possibly identify what somebody is limited by in terms of not being able to increase their speed any further, if we want to say increase our maximum sprinting speed. For example, if you see somebody who is unable to increase their stride frequency beyond the stride frequency that they get at when they top out their stride length, right? Like if somebody gets to here, where my mouse is, where the stride length starts to level off, and their stride frequency gets to the associated stride frequency below there, and they just can't increase it any further, like this is their max speed here where I'm going up and down there. That suggests, based on this study, that their problem is probably a hip problem, right? That they may need to work on the strength and power of their hip muscles, of their hip flexors and of their glute muscles and of their hamstrings. Okay? Alternatively, if we see someone whose stride length plateaus here at a much slower speed, like if somebody's stride length here plateaus at, say, 5 or 6 meters per second instead of like 7 meters per second, and then at 5 or 6 meters per second, they got to rely almost exclusively on increases in stride frequency and can't increase their stride length any further. That suggests that they could benefit from focusing on their plantar flexors here, from some strength training and power training of the plantar flexors and getting them to top out their contribution to vertical support and to stride length at a faster speed, something more in the ballpark of 7 meters per second rather than 5 or 6 meters per second. So possibly using this data here to identify what at the muscle level or the muscle group level at least might be limiting someone in terms of their sprinting speed and what could be the sources there and what could be done about it.